How's everybody doing? Are you geared up for the final session of the day? Yeah? Looking forward to learning about education or how to build a company in education and getting funding? Yeah? My name is Sanjit. I'm an investment director at Intel Capital. Intel Capital, for those of you who don't know, we are the venture capital arm of Intel Corporation, and we invest roughly $500 million in startups every year. We invest primarily in US, Western Europe, China, and the rest of the world, some geographies, the rest of the world as well. We are investors in several areas, from IoT to big data, to artificial intelligence, to education, to retail, you name it. We tend to lead most of the deals we do. I would say, lead 60 to 70% of the deals. Stage-wise, in general, we are stage agnostic, but we typically look for some product market fit proven out. And hence, we invest primarily at Series A or B level startups. So I hope this gives you an overview of Intel Capital, and happy to talk to you guys later on after this session as well. And I would love to invite the two panelists on stage at this point. What we're going to do is we're going to have them talk for 1 or 2 minutes each to talk about their story on Educents and let them give a perspective on both Educents and Quizlet, and then we'll get into the discussion. So without further ado, why don't we invite Kaitlyn, who is the COO of Educents, and Andrew Sutherland, who is the founder and CTO of Quizlet. Welcome, Kaitlyn. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. All right. Why don't we start with Kaitlyn, you, and if you can give a quick overview of what Educents is.
Sure. So my name is Kaitlyn Trabucco. I am the COO and founder of a site called Educents.com. We are a marketplace for educational products. So we sell curriculum, apps, downloads, books, and we specialize in DIY. So a parent or a teacher will make their own product in the classroom or at home or in their garage and sell that on Educents to other parents and teachers. We've found that we specialize in special needs. So a mom with a child with autism perhaps has come up with a game or a book or something that's particularly great for children with autism, and she can use our platform to sell that to other parents or teachers or someone who might be looking for special educational materials. So my business partner and I, we founded Educents 5.5 years ago out of our graduate program. We kind of slapped together a website, kind of described a little bit like, here's what we're thinking we might want to do, and here's what we might want to sell, and tried to kind of just basically paste out the vision. And on launch day, we had 45,000 people sign up. And of course, like, the site crashed, and we were like deer in headlights, and we're like, oh my goodness, like, we actually have a business here. And we bootstrapped the company for the first 2.5 years until we ended up raising a $15 million Series A round. So I say all of that to kind of preface, I know about rapid growth and being kind of unprepared for that growth. And I specifically asked if we could also kind of talk about the failures and the challenges and the times when you weren't seeing growth in the company today. Because those are, when I look back, some of the most important lessons that I've learned.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Kaitlyn. Why don't we go to you, Andrew?
Cool. I think when we launched Quizlet, about 10 people signed up the first day, so that's really impressive. So I started Quizlet for a high school French class in 2005 when I was 15, and I built this tool that would help me learn French animal vocab, and I started getting much better grades because of that, and then I shared that tool with the other students in my class. We all started getting much better grades, and then kept working on it for the first couple of years, and then launched it, and then went off to college, did computer science, and then moved in 2011 to San Francisco to really start the company and build up the team. And then in 2015, we raised our first Series A $12 million, and then a couple months ago we raised again another 20. And so Quizlet today has 30 million monthly active users. We're in the top 30 of all U.S. websites. About half of all U.S. high school students use it every month. About a third of all U.S. college students use it every month. And the last thing I want to say is I spent a lot of last year traveling and visiting schools all over the world, and spent some time in Finland. And there was sort of one story from that really stood out for me. This woman who's a adult immigrant teacher, so people who come from all over the world to Finland. She uses Quizlet to teach these students who want to become janitors, like basic hygiene terms and basic. They have to pass this really simple test, but it's written in Finnish. And if you are from Vietnam and you never actually learn to read or write at all, this is like a hard test to pass. And so she, with Quizlet, because it's a user-generated content platform, is able to build a very customized curriculum and create this really great experience for her students. And that's not really something that you could do on any other platform. So.
Awesome. And my kids, 14 years and 8 years old, they have been using Quizlet for, I would say, at least 3-4 years. So thank you for building.
Awesome.
And I hope they will start using Educents as well. Thank you. Kaitlyn, you touched upon it, and this is not just specific to education as a sector, but no startup goes through a linear growth curve. Right. The ride is always bumpy. Can you talk about the tough moments in the journey of Educents and how that affected you personally and how that pushed your personal growth potentially?
Oh, I would love to. I love talking about this. So I used to sit at conferences like this and be really inspired by these very successful, kid geniuses that would speak on stage and leave feeling kind of depressed and feeling like, they are so amazing. I'll never be that. And so I think it's really important to talk about the times that were really hard on stages and the times where I don't know you very well, but I'm sure that we both have times where we were crying in the bathroom, being like, what is going on here? And when I look back, those are the moments where I looked at the true value of my company, and there's no growth that ever comes from a company that doesn't provide value or really solves the problem. So the moments where, if you look at our graph and it was flatlined, those are the moments that I feel like I had to be incredibly introspective and understand what is the value that Educents brings and to focus on that versus, a lot of the very cheap hacks that can sometimes be unsustainable. And then also when I look at those moments, I was going to actually show a slide of company growth and then personal growth and how it was almost the exact opposite because the moments when the company was growing so fast, I felt like I could barely keep up and I could barely keep my hands on every little thing. But the moments when the company were flat were the moments that my confidence came from and the moments that I learned the most. And, when you think about a startup, there's just, Andrew can probably concur, there's so much mental space and energy that it's you almost feel like a psychopath. Your highs are so high and your lows are so low that it's really hard sometimes to decipher those things. And so if you are at a stage right now where you're give us some tips on how to grow, I would say stay calm, you'll get there, and know that you're not alone. This is really, really hard, what you're doing, really hard. Look at the value of the company and the problem that you're solving.
Thanks for sharing that, Kaitlyn. Andrew, how about your journey?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of similar moments for Quizlet. I've been working on it now for 12 and a half years, and I would say probably there were 3 or 4 times where I was ready to quit and almost did. And even though, things like maybe the business or the users were growing decently, just the team dynamic or the the setup of what we were doing and who we were trying to hire and stuff like that, it was just overwhelming and frustrating and didn't want to keep doing it. Felt like I could use myself in other ways. But then, sort of similar to you, thought more about how Quizlet is really helping people and it's this valuable thing. And if I could really figure it out and stick with it, it would be worth it in the end. And I think now for the last few years, it's been very much like that, and really glad I stuck with it.
Awesome, awesome. You know, education as a sector is massive, touches every human being on earth. Still, we don't see a Facebook or a Twitter, etc., coming up in education. What is holding the sector back? Kaitlyn, do you want to start, please?
Sure. I don't know what's holding us back. I do know that we've all tried to be the place for all things education so many times, and it's really, really difficult. And that's been a trap that Educents has fallen into a few times, to be, the place for teachers, the place for parents, the place for students, and really trying to cater to all those different aspects of the marketplace. And it's really, really difficult. When we raised our Series A, we also then tried to add on, it sounds funny now saying this on stage, we tried to add on like a social component and a content component and a messaging component. And it was really hard to fix that focus and understand what the user really needed, because like you said, it's such a huge market. It's so fragmented. I mean, people in the United States act so much different than, globally, or, California versus Massachusetts. So it's a big problem, and you're right, there should be kind of a go catch-all, but maybe that's the really beautiful thing about education, is that there's no such thing.
Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say there's certainly some big legacy companies, and then there are the that are like publishers, and they've been around for a long time and have these very legacy business models. And then there's the Google and Facebook and Apple and Amazon and those of the world that all have relatively large education efforts happening, but aren't really acquiring. And then there are a bunch of smaller companies. And I think the challenge with the overall market is there's a lot of the challenges of like a B2B enterprise company, where you have long sales cycles and it's relationship driven, and you're like trying to sell to these districts or schools. But without a lot of the benefits of that kind of model, which is there's like real dollars at stake. Like those entities don't have that much money, and they're not that smart about purchasing, and they can't move that quickly, and there are a lot of regulatory requirements and stuff like that. So it has like all of the downsides, but a few of the advantages of a B2B thing. And then there are some consumer models, but they're fewer, because especially in the US, there isn't that much willingness to pay, both from students directly or parents, or from schools or teachers that pay out of pocket. One thing, what we've done at Quizlet is in a consumer model, and so we've taken an approach that a lot of other companies haven't taken, and we have a subscription service that students can buy directly. We have a teacher service that they can buy directly. The teacher one's about $2 a month. The student one's about $1 a month. And so we've achieved actually a huge amount of scale building like a consumer software business. And because we have 30 million monthly active users, even if a small percentage of them pay, you can build a business like a lot of the other big sort of consumer subscription businesses.
Got it. Both of you have raised venture capital funding, and that's awesome. What has been your experience with pitching to VCs with an education company? Do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, so let's see. The first time around, we had been bootstrapped for literally 10 years before we raised money. So there were a lot of things that we had to sort of get in order. Because we hadn't been sort of part of we hadn't done YC, we hadn't done any like sort of accelerator or anything. We didn't know a lot of our basic metrics. We didn't know how many monthly active users we had. And so going into these meetings, like people knew that we were big and successful, but we'd not really that much more than that, and we didn't know either. And so that was kind of a very educational experience to then, after we did manage to finally raise, and we also had to convert the company from an LLC to a C Corp and do all these sort of preparation moves to get there. And then, yeah, after we raised, we built out a data infrastructure, and we did a lot of other things to sort of make it a more normal investable company. And then the second time around, so that was a long process. The second time around, we got a preemptive term sheet, and as we were sort of starting to signal, and we managed to start and finish the process in like a small number of weeks. So that was like a total shock to me and a very different experience than the first time around.
That was for your Series B?
Yeah, that was a Series B.
Wow, that's awesome. Preemptive and closing the round within a few weeks. Awesome. Yeah, that's brilliant. Kaitlyn, how about your experience with VCs?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I would say Educents is a little bit different, though, that we are direct to consumer, which you mentioned as well, which is a little bit, in my opinion, easier sell. The parent market is massive. We also had, as opposed to some other EdTech type companies, we had a monetization model. We sell goods and we charge a commission on them. So that was helpful. And then we also fall into a category of like a marketplace e-commerce. So we were able to kind of bridge the gap between like just pure education investors and like other types of models that they were looking for in their portfolio. But we did the YC EdTech accelerator. And that was incredibly helpful. I mean, we raised our series, our seed immediately after that because you just have this really strong network of investors that are investing in education and know the other investors that have a similar mentality or philosophy. And so that was incredibly helpful to kind of give us a start there.
Where do you see education as a sector going in the next 3 or 4 years? Do you think it will be all mobile education? Teaching will go all mobile? Kaitlyn, can I start with you?
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think we've actually seen that more globally than we have in the United States, where people have access to really just their cell phones. And I've seen some really amazing apps and programs come out of that, which have been incredible. I think both of our companies kind of represent this. I'm starting to see a trend of more customized curriculum. And so something else we've kind of been trying at Educents of like, my child's struggling in this, and coming up with a really customized platform for that child. And I think through technology, we're really able to do that now, where it's not the one-size-fits-all, even for 25 kids in a classroom, but every child in the classroom can have a more customized experience.
Yeah, I would say, let's see, there have been sort of ups and downs in EdTech companies in the last 10 years, and I would say we're sort of maybe at a trough, or in the U.S., like there have been a lot of companies that raise money in 2013, 2014 that are maybe hitting some stumbling blocks, and that's maybe cooled down the sector a little bit. The thing that is happening that's very clear to watch is there are a bunch of companies raising a ton of money in China, and who knows if they'll be successful, but like massive amounts of money going into education in China, and that's also starting to spill over in the U.S. Maybe you saw Edmodo got bought by a Chinese company. They're California company where I think most of their users are in the U.S., but they just got by a Chinese company. So that's definitely a trend that I think will continue at least for another couple of years.
Wonderful. On that note about massive investments going into education sector, would love to thank both of you, Kaitlyn and Andrew. I hope the audience found this interesting, not just from education sector standpoint, but as well as from how to grow a startup and the challenges on that journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.